Okay, so welcome back to the second module for Microsoft PowerPoint. We're going to start out with how we would insert and work with tables and spreadsheet worksheets, from Excel in our particular presentation, whatever page you want to put them on. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to click onto the first slide here. Okay, our title slide. We're going to go back into the Home tab, and we have our new slide button here. We'll click onto that, and we're going to go with the title and content. We're going to click onto that one. Now that's going to give us an area where we can put our title, and then we can actually then put a table in here below it. So what we do is we just kind of point to this guy here, Insert Table. You click onto it. It says OK. What would you like as far as the measurements? And I say, okay, I think I want to go with maybe 7 columns and maybe 6 rows. Now I can change that, later on, but that's just what I think I need initially. So I'll go ahead and hit OK. There we go. Now, depending on what you have for a theme, you might have graphics that are kind of in there as well. And if you're really, really picky and you want to make sure that this table isn't right up against the everything else here, what you can do is you can actually just go like right about here and just kind of pull that in just a little bit and give yourself some space there, so it's kind of like even with what we have over there. All right, but overall that's what we have. Now along the top we have what they call a header row, right? And that header row, if you look up here on the table design, all right, you'll see over here in the beginning it says header row. Now if I take that header row off, then you see that. So it's just a nice area to put your titling and so forth, for each of your columns. And if you do like that shading for your column labels, you can also then do a first column, and that will then color up this one here. Now if you're not real happy with what this looks like right now, while you're in the Design tab, you have the table styles here where you can actually click onto them and go with anything else that might look a little bit better. So you might say, well, I kind of like that look, but it's a little too orange, so maybe I'll go with this one here. So you click onto that and you get a little bit better, or a little different look, I shouldn't say better. Now what I'm going to do, just so that we don't get too confused here visually, I'm going to turn off the grids that you see here. We've been using those all along. I'm going to go back into the view up here. Take those grid lines off, all right? And I'm also going to get rid of the guide, and that's just the crosshair that you have in the middle to kind of show you where the middle of the page is. So this will make it a little bit cleaner to look at. Now this is where you normally would put like a worksheet like data into, and therefore maybe what we'll start out with is maybe getting our labels in here. So we're going to go up at the top here, and I'm just going to do something very general. We'll call this one maybe test 1, all right? And then I'll hit my tab key and I can type in test 2, and then test 3, test 4, and test 5, all right? And if I want to do a total, if that's what I'm thinking about putting in there, then I can put that as far as the last one here goes. But I think what I'm going to do instead, I'm just going to make that test 6, because I'm not really interested in maybe adding these things up. Now you'll probably notice that the coloring of the text is pretty light. Now I could go in there and kind of highlight all that, go back into Home, and kind of change my my font color if I wanted to. But I think what I'll do instead is, while I'm in here, I'm going to go back to my table design, and I'm going to look at some of these other styles maybe. And I'm thinking maybe, as I'm hovering over these things, maybe something like, maybe something like that one there, right? Kind of a grayer one with, or even, let's say this one here. Maybe this one here will do. Okay, so there it goes. All right, so there that is, right? Now, so this is our test. I'm going to go in here, I'm going to go click onto here, and maybe I'll call this one maybe like phase, we'll make it phase A, and then I'll just hit my down arrow key, and then phase B, same thing with phase C, and then phase D. And again, I'm not going to be doing any totals, so I'm going to put phase E in there. And I think that should do it there. All right. Okay, so then I realized that I'm probably going to need a few more test columns. All right, so I've got like 6 columns for my test, but I think I want to do more. So if I click anywhere in this last column here, and then I go over to the Layout tab, all right, it gives me this here. And I love this feature. Over here on the left here, it has insert below. So as far as rows and columns, insert below, insert to the left, insert to the right. I want to insert, and you can kind of see it looking like a column there. I'm going to insert on the right side. So now watch this. I click on insert right. There's one. Okay, I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 4 would be good. All right. And then I'll go back into here and I'll type in my test 7, and then test 8, and then test 9. And then I realized, I probably don't need that last column, so I'll just go anywhere in that column, see? And up here on there we've got the delete. All right, so I click on the delete, and I say delete column. So whatever column I'm on, I hit delete, and off it goes. Now, what I can do at that point is, because it got rid of it, it kind of shortened up the table, and I want this to be all the way over, so I can just go over here and just bring that out a little bit like that, all right? And let go, and there we are. Now we're back to what we had with a few more extra columns. And then I realized that I need to add another phase in between what I have already here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say I want to put that new row here, right? So I click onto that, and then I can just say I want to insert left, below, right, whichever one I want. So in this case, I want to put the new row here and kind of push everything down. So I'm going to say insert above, see? And it pushes everything down. And then I can go in here and I can call this one like phase X. All right, just to have something a little bit different there. All right, very good. So then all we need to do is put in all the numbers. So not to bore you while I type all these numbers in, I'm going to pause the video and work some magic here, okay? So abracadabra, and voila, look at that, huh? That was pretty fast. Now I want to show you something on this last one. If I'm at the last one here, and I realize that I need to do another phase, like maybe phase F, all right? All I have to do is hit, while I'm in this cell here, hit the tab key, and it automatically gives me a new row, and then I can start putting my information in there. So I'll type in something like phase F, right? And then I can just type in some numbers. Oh, too far. I messed that one up real bad, you guys. So we'll do this again here. I didn't hit the tab key while I was doing that, so. Oop. And that's it. And I don't want that last one, so I'm just going to hit undo there. Okay, very good. Now what I really love about the table features, I've got these dimensions. So I've got a certain number of columns, certain number of rows, but I still want the overall table height to be a little bit more. So what I can actually do is, while I'm selected on here, I can go to this graphic handle here, hold on the mouse and drag it down like this. So just as I did it for the width, I can do it for the height. Now when I do that, it makes everything proportionally taller. So every one of the rows now is exactly the same height. That's really nice. We used to not to have that. It used to be when you did that, you had to go back and kind of change every one of them, but that does them all nicely proportional for you. Now, the other thing that really kind of drives me nuts, and I think it does for a lot of people that look at tables, is that I really hate it when the number isn't at least, or the data, whatever's in the cell, isn't centered, at least top and bottom, in the worksheet. You can see how everything seems to be more towards the top of the row instead of it being, maybe in the middle. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to select this whole range here, just like that, right? And then what I can do is over here in the alignment area, I can change it from being aligned more towards the top, like it says here, to be more towards the center. Now watch down here when I click on this. I click that, See how it kind of moves everything down a little bit? That just looks a lot nicer. And I think overall, most of what you'd have in here, you want maybe to have centered as well, left and right. So while we got the whole thing still selected, we can go and hit the center button here and get everything all centered. All right? I think that looks good. Now, if you're thinking that maybe you'd like to have this more lined up on the left, you could select that and click on your left alignment there, and that would take care of that. But I think it looks good the way it is now. Now, another thing I want to do is I want to give more height to what we have here on the first row for our labels. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go right on the border. It doesn't matter which column you're on, but just right on the border here. Hold down the mouse and you drag it down a little bit like this and let go, and that makes that one taller. Now the rest of them stayed the same height, so that's, you know, that's the way it should be, and that's how it works. Now I can also go over here to the labels we've got on the side. Maybe I want a little bit more room there as well. So I go on to any one of the rows as long as I'm on that the border here, right? And you hold down the mouse, you drag it over a little bit like this, you let go, and it changes that. Now, what's happened is we've kind of robbed a little bit from this column in order to make this happen, because it's not, when you go to do the columns, it doesn't want to push this table off the slide, see? So it just kind of scrunches that up. Now what I need to do is, maybe I'll bring this back just a little bit because I don't need that much, but obviously this is going to be a lot less room. So I want to kind of get this column to be wider, obviously, but when I do that, it's going to be then at the expense of the next column, see? And you can see it's noticeable as far as the width differences between the two there. So what I need to do is make these all exactly the same width, you know, from test 1 to test 9. Make them exactly the same width, but not increase the overall width. All right? Now to do that, I do something what we call distributing, and we're going to be distributing the columns over that width. So what we do is we select this whole range right here like that. We're not doing the first column here, right? So just select that range there, and then we're going to go over here to the distribute columns. Now watch this. I click that one time. Now watch what happens down there. I click it. Boom, look at that. That is unbelievable. That's a great, great tool to have there. If you have the same problem with the rows, in other words, maybe for whatever reason you said, I want to make this row about like that. Well, okay, well now that you made that one that width, that height, but now the rest of them are not that height. So what you could do then is, given the overall size that you've got here, the height here, I could actually select from here down to here and then do the distribute rows, see? So you do that, and given that new height that we have, it now made all those exactly the same. Let me undo this so you can see it. So there it was before, and now I'll redo it, and you see that. So that's pretty cool. Let's say that I want to make this phase X row kind of stand out from the rest, okay, and kind of change the bordering a little bit. So what I can actually do is kind of select that range right there. So I'm doing basically that whole row there, right? Now at the top here in the table design, I have some bordering I can do. I can go in here and do the borders, but the problem is that I want something a little bit more thick. These are going to be very thin borders. So what I can do is I can actually click on this little drop down arrow here, all right? And I can pick the kind of style border I want to do. Now it might be kind of cool to, instead of having maybe a solid border, maybe some sort of like a dashed border. So I can click onto that, all right? And then the other thing is I want it to be a little bit thicker than being just 1 point. 1 point is basically 1/72 of an inch. So that's pretty narrow. So let's say I want to maybe go with a 3 point. So I do something like that. And then I can also pick the color that I want it to be, you know, the border. And in this case, maybe I'll make it red. That'll look pretty obnoxious. Now, all right, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back over here to the borders, right? And even though they still look the same, they're actually going to follow whatever I chose over here, right? So I'm going to choose the top border, all right? There's the top border. Then I go back in there again and I'll choose the bottom border. So then I get that. And there we go. That's pretty easy to do. Now, if I want to do kind of like the same thing, maybe with another row, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and I'll figure I want to keep the same kind of design, but just a different color. So I'll go in here and maybe I'll pick the green, okay? Now, what I'll do at that point then is you know what I got to do here? Let me turn that off. The draw table kind of turns on automatically, and I don't want to do that. So I turn that off. Now I'm going to go back, and what I should have done was selected this ahead of time. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select, let's say D. I'll just do this one here, okay? So phase D. And then what I'll do is I'll go back into the borders, all right? And I'll choose my top border. There's the green. And then I'll choose my bottom border. And there we go. And if I click away from it all, then you can kind of see that as well. Now what I can also do, if I want to kind of change up the shading a little bit, I'll leave this one maybe, well, actually I guess I'll change it all. But I can actually go ahead and just select this whole row here again, go over into my shading, right, click onto here, and I can pick maybe a very light, red, and I don't have any light reds in here, so what I'll do is I'll go to more fill colors, like this, right, and I can go and find, go to custom, let's say, kind of drag this over to maybe this area here, and then I can go and kind of do this, kind of get in the red area there, kind of bring this up a little bit like that. But you find the coloring that you want, you hit OK, and there's your shading on that. Now that's one way of doing it. The other way would be, I'm just going to go and hit undo on that, right? The other way would be to select it, go back to your shading, right, and click onto the eyedropper, right? So now you click onto that, and then what you can do with the eyedropper is anywhere on the slide here, you can actually find a coloring that you like. So maybe you want to go with maybe something along this coloring right here. You can see that little box letting you know what color you currently are working with, say. So I go, maybe I'll do more of a gold here. So maybe something about right here, click onto that, and now that becomes the coloring. And if I click away from it, there we go. Now of course, because I made that the same color as the text, that kind of messed up here. So I might even consider just hitting undo, clicking away from it and saying, you know what, that looks good the way it is. But that's up to you. It just depends on how much time you want to spend, messing with this. Now another thing you can also do with your text here is we can actually take this range right here of our labels, go back over here to layout, and we can actually change the text direction. So in this area right here in the alignment area, I can click onto that, and I've got those different directions I can go. So I can either spell test like that, which is not going to look very good, or I can do it like this. Now that might be okay. So we can click onto that, right? There it is. Now what I might have to do at this point then is make the row taller, right? So I can drag it down like that and make that taller and do that. And I think this is good if you've got more in here, but I think it just leaves too much space in there. And if I go ahead and I change the width here a little bit, if I kind of pull this in like this, all right, I do that, that's fine, but then it's not taking up the whole width here, and that might be something that you'd want to do. So you can either maybe do something like this, right, and then you can just use your mouse here, and you can kind of drag the whole table over like that and make it more of a centered thing, right? Or you can just say, you know what, bad idea, I'm just going to hit undo a number of times and put it back to where it was. So I undo, and there we go. All right, so it's up to you. Again, you can get very obsessed with this and really spend a lot of time, and it probably won't even be that much appreciated, right? I think if you can just get a good look where when somebody sees this, on the screen, they focus in on it, they know what you're doing, they know what you're trying to convey. I think that's all that's important, really. But, again, I might still want to take the table here, so I'll click onto it, and at least maybe pull it down a little bit like that. I think that looks good. You can also use your arrow keys. Once you've got it selected, like you see it there, you can use your up and down arrow keys or your left or right arrow keys to kind of move it around and get it just right on there. But overall, you'll eventually have it. Now here's something that might be a little bit out there, but just kind of hang in there with me. Let's say that one of these numbers or one of these cells, let's say phase C, test number 5, actually consisted of two different numbers, all right? And you want to have a nice you might want to take this one cell and split it into two and have two different numbers in there. I have no idea why you would do this, but I'm just throwing something out there to give you some ideas. So what you can actually do is you can click anywhere on this cell, right? Go back over into your layout and tell it that you want to split the cell. So the one we're on right here right now, we go over here to split cells, and we tell it we want two columns. So in here, we want two columns and one row. So we just hit OK, and now there's your 29 on one side, and maybe you've got 98 on the other side. They're both centered. Looks a little odd, but it might mean something to your audience or to your audience, whatever. So you've got something like that. You can do that. Now another thought would be that you're thinking about maybe putting a title at the top of this, or maybe even along the side of it, you know, whatever. But you want to put a title on this so people know what they're looking at. You might have a title up here, but at the same time you might want to have a more specific title here, either here or along the side. So I'm going to show you two different ways of doing this. One where it's along the top, the other one where it's along the side. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here to this cell here, to this column, anywhere on here, right? And I'm going to go back into my layout and tell it that I want to insert a column to the left. So this insert left here. So I click onto that and it pushes that over. Now what it does is it ends up making this a regular column, and now this is the new beginning one that we had here. So when we're looking at, let me just go back into the table here so you can see this. So this first column setting is now on the first column, which is now this blank area here. Now what I want to do with this is take this whole range right here. So I'm going to highlight this whole thing down to phase F, from A to F, all right? Select that, and I'm going to go back into my table layout here and tell it that I want to merge the cells, see? So I click on a merge, and now it becomes one single cell. And let's just say that I want to put in there for a title the final testing sequence, whatever the heck that means, right? So that's that. Now you could leave it like that, that'd be fine, but why not go ahead and change, while we're in the layout here, go to my text direction and tell it that I want to go with the vertical. How about that, right? And then once I've done that, I don't need all that width. I can go back right into here and make that much less wide. So something like that, see? Now I really don't need that much width for these guys here, so I can kind of pull this one in, right? And then once I've got that, then I can actually take all of these, all right, and go back into my layout here and tell it I wanted to distribute the columns once again. That'll get them all nicely laid out there. Now that, again, that goes back to what we had done earlier with the two numbers, and that, I don't know, at this point I think that looks pretty bad. I would say that instead of maybe doing it like this, what we could do instead, let me just go ahead and select these, select that, tell it to merge those cells, right, and maybe just type in 29/98, something like that. That way it's not taking up as much room. So then what I can do is I can go back and reselect that same range, just like that, distribute columns, and there we go. And that makes it look, I think, a little bit better, really. Now to kind of make this area stand out like it did originally, what I can do is maybe select this range like that, right? And then go back into my shading, which is in my table design, and find a color, maybe something like this here. I think I'd probably want something darker, but I guess what I could do is I could select this, hit my shading, go with my eyedropper, and maybe come up with one of these colors up here, some of the shading that I have. Maybe maybe about like right there. So click that, click away from it, and there we go. That doesn't look too bad. I'm not perfect. You probably don't want me doing your presentation, so that's about it on that. You could probably even go as far as selecting this like that and go to borders and put a right border in there. Now, of course, it's going to give me the color that I had last and the shape and all that. So what I'll do is I'll put this back to a solid one, and then I'll change this back to being just the 1 point, and we'll also make it kind of an orange to kind of match what we already have there. I don't know if that'll be right, but we'll see. And then I'll go back to my borders again and do a right border. I'll just kind of overwrite the right. And there we go. All right, so not bad. And really not to forget, if you didn't want to put the title here, or maybe you want to have a title there, maybe even have a different title along the top here, the set of steps is pretty much the same thing. I would just go onto this row here, right? I go back into my layout, and I say I want to insert a row above, so insert above, and that does that for me. So, and I can go ahead and select that. I can merge it, put my title in there, center it, do whatever I need to do, change the shading on that. But I think overall, I think this is probably a much better way of doing it. I'm just going to hit undo here. And the reason why I like this way here, even if I were to go in there and make that a little bit wider, that's okay. It kind of makes it stand out. I mean, people aren't expecting to see it along the side like that. So to me, I think that would be a nice little, like, attention grabber, if anything. And then one last thing, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to distribute this area here. So I'm going to select that, hit distribute columns, perfect, and that's it. So that'll be it for that. I'm going to do the next video, we're going to work with the spreadsheets, because I didn't want to add it to this one. We're already up to like 27 minutes. So this will be good for now, and I look forward to having you watch the next video, which will be the inserting worksheets and linking